What's up, Virtue family? Welcome to the final episode of season 2 of the Virtue Way. Now, I know y'all might get tired of hearing it, y'all, but I am super excited. And why? Because we made it to the end of season 2 and we've had such an amazing time. And honestly, we wouldn't have been able to make it this far or to have this much success if it wasn't for you guys. So I want to say thank you to all of you, because really, why have a podcast if no one's going to listen and no one is going to watch? And you guys have been not only supporting, but you guys have also been encouraging. You also have been kind, praying for us, letting us know how much you're enjoying the episodes and how much you're relating to the episodes and how much it's blessing you. And for us, that's the most important thing. So we're so happy. We're just excited that we made it through another season, and we just can't wait. We just can't wait to get into what God has next. So as I reflect, not only am I just grateful for the support and encouragement, but also the feedback, right? Because everything is not perfect, and realistically, without your feedback, we won't know what to do better for next time for season 3. Now, many of you are asking about season 3 and what we're going to do. And honestly, to be honest, I'm just not sure yet. I'm not sure where God wants to go as it pertains to Virtue, but just a disclaimer. Virtue is a community created for the bold, okay? So it's a community for us to get together, encourage one another, hold each other accountable so that we do not fall into societal pressures. So we are a community that comes together. We have a WhatsApp chat, an accountability chat, so that we can talk to each other throughout the day, throughout the weeks, talk about our struggles, talk about the things we're dealing with, asking questions, sharing scriptures and videos and all that good stuff. So, and I think I've said this in other episodes, like the podcast was just like an offset, right? People wanted a podcast. People wanted me to put the same conversations that you've seen over the past 2 seasons in front of you guys so that you can be a part of it and see that we're all going through the same things. There's nothing different from me than you throughout this journey, etc. So that's what the podcast is here for. But I'm also so excited to share with you guys all the things that we did this year, from having our first event. We had our first Virtue event. It was a women's only event, but God moved so mightily. We had over 60 women in the room, and there were laughs, cries, there were prayer, games, giveaways, all that good stuff. And we did all of that, and we talked about your value as a woman in God, and there was just so much breakthrough, and we're so excited for the rest of the events that we're going to be doing. They're just going to get better and better and better. But once again, having this podcast was able to spread awareness, cast a wider net for us to be able to reach more people so that people can be connected and come to the events like which and what we had. Also did a book study this year, guys. We did a 6-week book study where we talked about the book Waiting and Dating by Dr. Miles Monroe. And literally we would meet every single week. We would read 1 chapter a week and we would discuss it on Zoom. And this was amazing because, for one, most of us do not like to read and don't read as much as we are supposed to. However, this was a way for us to challenge ourselves. It was another opportunity for us to get together, to talk and to converse and fellowship about things that we're dealing with, but also for us to learn and to take tools on how to have sensible love relationships and prepare for kingdom marriages and how to date God's way. So that's just another way of us doing things and doing different things, more than just, these videos that you guys see. We also had a fun Virtue Friendsgiving where we went bowling, and that was super fun as well. Something super light, right? Everything doesn't have to be deep all the time. But that even was fun for us to get together, have a fun time, go bowling, and just be able to learn one another on a personal basis. So more events like that will come. We actually have planned out our next 4 months of events. So make sure that you guys are subscribing. Make sure you guys are staying connected, that you're following us on all social media so that you can be a part of all the amazing things that we are doing. So since we have gone ahead and caught up with all the amazing things that we've done this year for Virtue, let's talk about a little bit of what's going on with me so far. Obviously, even from the first episode that you guys saw this season, I am a completely different person. I've learned so much, I've experienced so much. And guys, honestly, this journey is not easy, okay? If y'all are really on this journey for real, you know that this journey has ebbs and flows, ups and downs. It's not always easy. And honestly, being a Christian is not easy. And I think that's why this podcast is so important, because it's a way for us to show that you can be a Christian, you can be a follower of Jesus Christ and still deal with things and still go through things. But the truth is, God helps us to grow through every situation, and that's what we want to show you guys. That is what we want to showcase. But it has been hard, but I will say I'm grateful for all of the things that I've learned along the ways, all the ways that I've been strengthened, all the ways that I have been able to be a bigger and a greater example, but also to all the things that I've been able to take in from my studying, my learning, my conversations, different videos I've been watching, different books I've been reading as well too. All those things help to strengthen me for this walk, and I want to be able to ensure that we are assisting all of you along on this journey as well too, so that we can be strong in the kingdom and be strong disciples for Jesus. Also, there are a lot of things that I am trusting God for in this upcoming year, some transitions, some changes, and even for virtue. And those are some things that only God can really do. And what I've realized is that there is a level of faith that you do need to have to be able to go ahead and to execute, and to be able to go ahead and jump into those deep waters and chase certain dreams and do certain things that God has called you to do. And without that faith, you won't be able to be successful. But if you just keep your head down and be able to just go straight and do what you've been called to do, everything is definitely going to work out in your favor. And I'll be honest, trusting God is not always easy, at least, especially if you are someone that has been burned before, if you're someone that has gone through things, been betrayed, which we've all been betrayed, right? But especially if you have really been burned by people, sometimes it's very hard to trust, no matter how much you love God, no matter how much you serve in your ministry, no matter how much you read the Bible and pray. There's just some things that sometimes be like, God, like, for real? Like, are you sure? Like, did you really say that? Did I hear you correctly? Are you really there? Are you hearing me? So that's just the truth of the matter. And it sometimes is really hard, but God does not want us to get weary in our well-doing. And all we have to do is just keep trusting him, even when we don't want to, even when we don't believe it. Fake the funk until you have the faith to do all the things that you really want and to get the desires of your heart. So let us take a trip down memory lane through this season. And I really wanted to do this in the last episode because there's just so much. We had so many different kinds of peoples: singles, divorced, married, dating, in ministry, not in ministry, doing kingdom work in the marketplace. So many different type of people, so many different type of conversations that realistically, it is really hard to say, okay, this episode, was my favorite episode, because everything was different, But the truth of the matter is, I wanted to go ahead and recap on all of this so that we're able to just see how amazing season 2 was, and to take it all in and bring it all back to our remembrance. So episode 1 was just little old me by myself, but we talked about the value of virtue. We talked about the value of purity. We talked about what virtue meant and what virtue was all about. And it was really important for me to start season 2 off with that, and with the foundation and the groundwork, because honestly, sometimes people just, join a movement, or they just participate in something, not really knowing what the pillars are, not really knowing what the foundation is. And I really wanted to go ahead and put that out there so people know what virtue is all about and why abstinence is important. And one of the main things that I did want to go ahead and translate through that message is that you have to know your why. When you know your why, when you know what you're doing it for, no one can sway you. You need to know your value. You need to know your value for yourself, but you also need to know your value in God. And no one should be able to come in and sway your mind and change your decision, or make you feel like you have to make a decision after your mind has been made up. So that's something I really wanted to press upon in that episode, and let's take a look.
I'm really excited about that. So how I've pretty much made it through is honestly remembering my commitment to God. That's just really it. When it comes to this, you have to, and I know I spoke about it in one of the previous episodes in season 1, but it's really like, what are you like, why? right? And I used to be in network marketing, and they would always say, if your why doesn't make you cry, it's not strong enough. And when I think of my why in this situation, like, I know what God has promised for me. I know what he wants to give to me. I know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So all I have to do is be obedient. And it's not to say that we have to be perfect, because no one is perfect. And it's not to say God is not going to bless you, because God always comes and put his hands in our mess and change situations around for our good. But sometimes, like it says in the Bible, obedience is better than sacrifice. And it's better to just know not to do this, not to tiptoe, because a lot of people like to see, okay, how close to the line can I get? Like, I'm gonna just tiptoe there without really crossing it. I'm gonna, like, dip my finger in. And sometimes touching a hot heater, right? And eventually you're gonna notice, oh snap, like I burned my finger. Yeah, because you keep tiptoeing, you keep trying to make it acceptable when it is not acceptable. So how I keep going is just really remembering my commitment to God. And also remembering God's promise for me as well too, because God has promised all of us something. Like, even if you're like, I don't really know what God has promised me, take a second, quiet the space, quiet your mind, and something is going to come to your remembrance of something that God has promised specifically for you. And I know for a fact that there has been situations where you were supposed to get a specific blessing. There was something you were supposed to get, but you went left when God told you to go right. You did something where you knew, like, dang, I knew I was supposed to get this by this time, but because I did something else, now I've been rerouted. It's kind of like when you're driving somewhere. I have a bad sense of direction. I say this all the time. And you miss your exit. And you reroute. And when you only had 10 minutes left to your destination, now you have 20 minutes to your destination. And people always say, oh, I don't know how they were in the wilderness for 40 years when they should have got there in 11 days. Well, how many of the blessing we were supposed to get at a certain time, at a certain age, that we haven't received yet because we're being disobedient, because we're putting other things before our commitment and our relationship to God? That's how I look at this same thing. Like, what is God going to withhold from me if I'm not obedient? What is he going to withhold from me if I don't just stay the course for this X amount of time? I think about that. And it's not to say that God is a giver, that God does give and take away, but it's just to say that if I'm being obedient to him, I know that there's just far much more that we will receive from being obedient in the things that God has called us to do and be.
So that episode was so amazing. So many people are still reaching out, commenting on it, still watching that video, and still being blessed by it. So next, I invited my sister Giovanni to the platform. And y'all, when I tell y'all, this conversation shocked social media. I mean, it was in a frenzy. But I'm so excited that we were able to come up here and talk about things that we've never actually spoken about in public, all for God's glory, all to be able to bless you guys. We were able to talk about our journey as Christians, working through relationships, going from making music for secular music in the world to going and just giving our gifts and glory and honor to God, because he is the one that gave us those gifts. And we went and we just had this open, raw, and transparent conversation. We even spoke about abortions. And guys, let me tell you, especially when we're in this big debate over abortions and women's rights and all those things, it was very important for us to go ahead and have that conversation out in the open, because I probably can count on both of my hands, off the top of my head, many women who I personally know that have had abortions. And as someone who has learned more and grown more and understand what it is that we really did, it's really something that we want people and women and even men too, right? If men have, pushed women to have abortions, that is something that just isn't right. And it's something that we shouldn't have done. And that's what we want to come in and let you guys know, that it is something that, yes, God has given us grace and we have been forgiven for doing it. However, there also needs to be a spirit of repentance. We need to be able to repent for doing that, because realistically in the Bible, people would actually sacrifice their babies by fire to get wealth and to get things that they desired and to get all these amazing things to the demon Moloch. And now people are sacrificing and killing their babies, because that's what it is. It's murder. And they're killing their babies because maybe they don't don't have the money to raise it, or they, you know, are in a bad situation, they want to finish school, it's still a level of sacrifice. And we need to have a deep level of repentance for the things that we have done, and then accept God's grace and forgiveness for it, and then be an example to go out there and talk to women and talk to men and let them know that this is not a decision that they have to make. So this was an amazing conversation, and let's take a look at what it was all about. Yeah, honestly, I think really just sometimes you have to make hard decisions, and especially when you're in a relationship, and it's not impossible. And I'm not going to say it is or is not harder for men, but what I will say is that it can be harder for men until you end up pregnant. You know, I got into that situation where, you know, and at that time I wasn't on an abstinent journey, but I ended up pregnant. And, you know, what's so crazy is that, you know, I opted into getting an abortion. And at that time, it was so easy for me to, it was like an easy decision because so many people around me, it was easy. It was so accessible. Like abortion is so accessible, you know, where people can make that decision without even thinking about it twice. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? And now when I look at it, where people have this big conversation of pro-life and having a choice and having all these things, really, we wouldn't be having that conversation if we would help more people not even put themselves in that situation to begin with.
So yes, I had an abortion as well. And this was actually in 2022, which was when the Lord was pulling on me and stuff. But when I got pregnant and had that whole experience, I think that's when, again, God works all things. It's when I lost my marbles. Like, it was a very tough time for me. That's when I knew that my way was taking me straight to the pit. Like
straight down, girl.
Straight to the pit. I was like, oh nah, like I'm bugging. And I knew that at that time nobody could have helped that depression. That sadness.
Wow.
That I went through, I could clear as day remember myself in my apartment. I was, after I chose the abortion, and I locked myself in my apartment. I lived by myself. And I remember days just in the bed crying, and just asking God why. Because deep down, so I have a dream to be a mother. Like I love kids. I've been a nanny for years. I work with kids now. I'm a teacher part-time when I dabble and nibble. I got so many titles. Yeah, you see when you see me. But you know, I have the ability to be a teacher. So I'm always around kids. It's just, I feel like that's a gift. That's a ministry that God has blessed me with. And a wife before anything. But when that happened, it just didn't feel right. When I got pregnant, it wasn't with the right person. It was with a fling. I was just outside living how I wanted to live, having fun, and I reaped consequences, and nobody around me was happy. And that pressure of, also I didn't really, it wasn't until after this, mind you, that I was getting the real relation with God, really knowing his word. And like you said, which it hit home, where like, if I knew that God could turn it all around, if I knew that God, you know, was as gracious, and, you know, that babies are blessings regardless.
Absolutely.
Although, you know, we need to be mindful of how we go about it, but it's a blessing from God. And like, I would have chose a different, I literally just needed one person to tell me in that moment that it was okay, you know? And
once again, guys, super powerful, super transparent, and it's literally a conversation that so many people, more than we would want to, can relate to, but we pray that it blessed more people, and that it continues to bless people, and that people would actually make a different decision if they're ever in that situation again. So moving forward, we had Jamila and Giovanni, and man, when I tell y'all, this conversation was so controversial. When I tell y'all the attacks that came just from Jamila and Giovanni, talking about their truth, talking about their spiritual journey. And let's just be honest, guys. Everyone is looking for something. Everyone is looking for something to fill that void. They feel something, that a part of them that's empty, and they want to replace that. And what they don't know is that they're looking for Jesus, and only Jesus can fill that void that they have. And that's a part of the conversation that we went through. I mean, going from Muslim to Christian, going from, reading the Book of Mormons and, being married and then getting a divorce, and the taboo things that people don't like to talk about Christians, but it is all a part of the journey, and something that they were so bold enough to proclaim and even discuss on the podcast. And for that, I'm grateful that they even chose this platform to be so honest about, and even them discuss things that they have never discussed before in the open. So let's get into it.
Hold on. Is this the guy that told you he would never be serious with you because you were not Christian, because you were Muslim?
Yes. He
What did
literally
that
said-
feel like?
I felt like coming across that table. What do you mean? Like, why do you have me out here?
That's true.
What
That's
the
a good point.
intentions of dating?
That is true.
If you're saying you're a Muslim, I'm a Christian, I will never be unequally yoked.
Wow.
And for me, I was taken back, but I was also intrigued because I didn't have those standards for my own faith. So I was like, what God do you believe in that you are so bold about what you have to say? You know what I'm saying?
That's
I
good.
always wanted children.
Yeah.
Always want children. I dodged so much. And what I realized with a divorce, it reveals a lot, because I was so naive, because I was going to the army, but I had no orders yet, no paperwork. Because I said, I'm going to go back to the army. I'm not suffering. I just came out the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And 2 months later, 3 months later, I went to a different branch, which I don't regret doing. But the thing is, I was moving so fast, I just wanted to get out. I didn't want to go back to the Marines because I felt like everything was tied to her. But yeah, she asked me she said, hey, like, I'm not going to sign the papers until you give me money and this, that, and the third. So I started to think, I said, wait, am I just good for this? But anyways, it's just, for me, my lesson and feeling, because trust me, a lot of Christians won't speak on this, but being a divorced Christian, it's not easy. Biblically, and as well to the world. It's not easy because, it's easy for people to say, oh, you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that, you're supposed to stick it through. It's easy to say until you walk in that person's shoes. And don't be with somebody. My homeboy said this to me the other day. He said, yeah, both of you guys are Christian, get married. He said, it don't work that way. He said, you guys have to be on the same page.
Guys, equally yoked.
Yeah, because what if children was there?
Yeah.
My uncle was a Jamaican who's not even saved. One of my other uncles, he said, Giovanni, I remember that day. He said, Giovanni, thank God. But the way how he said it, because he felt it before.
Yeah.
But the way how he said it, and I was like, yo, because I was questioning, I said, how? This is impossible. But he said, thank God, because, we're reasoning.
Yeah.
And even my dad, like, to this day, you know how Jamaican man.
Yeah.
Well, he's not the typical Jamaican man. You hear how he speaks, very soft, small spoken. And he said to me, well, you have to learn. I'm like, that's love. That's him showing his love.
Yeah.
So powerful, guys. So powerful. And I hope that this encourages you that no matter how you got to your journey or how you got to the end point of where you are now and believing in Jesus and confessing that you believe what he did for us on the cross and that he rose again and that you've repented and you've turned from your ways, I pray that you are able and bold enough to go out there and continue to proclaim your story, because there is no one like you and there is no other person that has the same exact story as you. Yes, someone can have similarities, but it doesn't mean they have the same exact story. And you never know who your story can bless. So it doesn't matter what you went through to get there. As long as you go ahead and tell your testimony, other people will be saved and blessed by it. So moving right along, we brought my feisty sister Lily up here, y'all. And I know it was a little bit of a shock to all the religious folks out there, but I know it was a shock to the virtual community because that's not usually the spicy conversations that we had up here. But let me tell y'all something. This conversation spoke to a specific group of people, and it was so necessary. We talked about how you could be divorced, but it doesn't mean that God has denied you, and you can still have the desires of your heart. You can be a businesswoman, you can be a bold woman, you can go for all the things that you want to go for, but there are just certain things as women that we do that kind of, sets us back a little bit. And then it also says that no matter how much of an amazing woman that you are, there are just some things that you are going to go through, and that doesn't make you any less of an amazing person. So y'all, we got into some really good conversation, spicy conversation, but there were so many women and testimonies and just expressions of gratitude for this conversation. And I'm just so grateful because, sometimes people like to come in and they like to calm themselves down. They like to be soft, or they might not want certain characteristics or parts of their personality to show. She always makes sure that she always is true to who she is, and for that, I am grateful. So let's take a look to what Lily had to say on the podcast.
A wife before you were a wife. And I know that, as women, we kind of feel like we need to prove ourselves to kind of earn that ring. I mean, that's what I observe. That's just like, okay, if I do all of these things, then he will see my value. Then he will want to, propose to me. But I also feel that when you do too much too soon, he might feel like, okay, if you're already doing this for me, then why do I need to put a ring on your finger? Because nothing is going to be different. And I think that's why now people don't value marriage the way it used to be before, because it's like, okay, well, we living together, we sleeping together, you're cooking, you're cleaning, we got kids, we're doing everything that married people do. So what difference is it going to make if I marry you? Can you speak a little bit on being a wife before the wife and how it could be, I don't know, maybe a good and a bad thing? Or is it more bad than good? Like, speak on that. Release me, girl. I'm ready to talk, right?
There's pros and cons to everything in life, right? And with everything, there's moderation and adjustments. There is a huge difference between being a wife that's a wife in her DNA and her behavior and her character and her prayer life and everything, right? In all aspects, there's a difference. A man either knows when he sees a woman, this is a wife, and there's a difference between a wife and a pick-me bitch.
Okay, come on.
A pick-me bitch is saying, okay, this is a man that hasn't, see, there's a lot of men that claim they want wives, but they're not husbands.
Come on.
Right? There's a lot of men who want wives, but they don't even come assembled as a husband already. So you have to be careful when you're selecting these men, because women are prone to being nurturers and they're prone to wanting to fix things.
Yes.
So don't allow the nurturer and the fixer in you to feel like, okay, this is not your project. This is my bear. I'm going to be a Build-A-Bear. And now I'm doing all these things because I want someone to pick me. I want someone to love me.
Wow.
I can change him. I want to prove myself, because let me tell you something. There's women out here who don't cook, who don't clean, who don't do anything.
Come on.
And they'll take your man.
All right.
So all of that, you have to do it because that's in your DNA.
Who you are.
When a man is a man and he operates in his masculinity, women by nature are multipliers. So anything that a man does, a woman is naturally going to want to do back and give back in a mighty way. So the better a man treats me, the more I want to be that wife and I want to tend to him. The more I want to rub your feet because I see you working hard.
Yes.
The more I want to make sure that if I'm busy, your plate is already made, honey. It's in the oven or it's in the microwave waiting for you. The more a woman wants to do those things. But when you are doing those things, not because a man has led you first and now you're multiplying what he has given you, then now what you're doing is instead chasing a man. And when you chase things run away from you.
Yep. Come on. Come on.
And after replaying this episode, one thing that I had to say is, I want to repent for, making it seem that this journey is optional. And when I say that, it's just oftentimes we feel like, yes, we know what we're supposed to do, but because of our feelings or because of our flesh, we make excuses for those things. And the truth is, if there is something that God told us to do, regardless how we feel about it, we need to do it. For example, I was watching a podcast and this lady who was being interviewed, she's in her 50s or something, and she was just like, yeah, God made me this way, and although I know that I should be abstinent or not fornicating, I'm 50 years old. I have desires. I have needs. And I think that's just an exact testament to what sin is. Going into your flesh, although God said to do something and you're defiantly being disobedient. God says that rebellion is as bad as witchcraft, y'all, and we don't want to be on God's bad side. So we have to just make sure that regardless of what our flesh wants, regardless of what we want to do, we need to be obedient to God. And I want to ensure that I am not casting a vision to anyone to make them believe that abstinence is a choice. If you are unmarried, you shouldn't be having sex, period. All right. So moving right along, we're going to get into the episode with John Clash. And even that is just a segue off of really talking about sin and really getting into the nitty gritty of our responsibilities as believers and being an example. And for someone like John Clash, I always say, I feel like he kind of reminds me of Paul. Like, he takes no crap. Like, he don't take the fluff. He's going to go out and he's going to just rebuke and correct all the time. And that's something that we really have to appreciate, because the truth is there are too many people that are out here, maybe even with platforms like this, that make people think that their sin is okay, that make people think that their sin is cute, and there's nothing cute about sin. So one thing that I appreciate about John Clash is that he's someone that just doesn't care. He's going to be honest. And not only that, he's going to take the time to do the research. He's going to take the time to study. He's going to make time to find in the word exactly to back up the things that he's saying. And because he had been led astray, he wants to ensure that other people are not being led astray too. And for that, that is something that I can totally appreciate. So guys, let's get into John Clash. So let's just jump right into it, John Clash. Let's start here. What made you start literally blasting people on social media?
Oh, man. So you just wasted no time.
Let's just jump right into it.
All right.
How did that start?
So let's just first define what blasting people on social media is.
Yeah, because they might take it a different way.
Yeah,
we don't
want. Hold up. I mean, that's probably good, because they're gonna be like, well, let me go look at his stuff, But so I don't just randomly. I don't know what camera I'm looking at, but I just don't randomly blast people. There's a method to the madness. Mm-hmm. So one of the things. So I'm obviously a Christian, mm-hmm. right? And when I first started my Christian walk, it was a very confusing walk, because I didn't have anybody really to hold me accountable. I didn't have any discipleship. I just got saved and boom, that was it. Kind of like Lone Ranger, going to this church, going to that church, mm-hmm. no real discipleship. Mm-hmm. And that affected my life a lot. And it really affected me when I started losing everything in business. Mm-hmm. My life's falling apart. And I had this idea that I was on the right side of history now, which you are when you become a Christian. You're born again. You're born into the family of the one who created the whole entire universe. Mm-hmm. So in that aspect, good money. Mm-hmm. But my life was falling apart. Wow. And I'm like, oh no, I thought that if, I'm a Christian now, that my life is supposed to be good. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I thought this is because of pastors and preachers, these popular preachers saying this stuff. So me, I'm like, nah, there's got to be something wrong. I know God's real, mm-hmm. but there must be something that I'm missing about his nature. Wow. There's something that I'm missing about this relationship that I'm supposed to have with him. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at him, not as a genie in the bottle, but just expecting for things to always work out no mm-hmm. matter what, because, mm-hmm. hey, I'm one of yours now. I thought this is how this works. And that's because I was illiterate on the Bible, didn't know how to read it, didn't know how to properly exegete scripture. I had no idea how to do this. So I now get really bothered when I see these people just ripping verses out of context and creating whole entire theologies out of them and just putting it out there. Yeah. And then I see little me's following right behind them, yeah, speak it, preach it, pastor. And I'm just no, this is wrong.
Yeah, leading you down to a path of destruction.
Yeah, and the same thing happened with I'm always attacking these demon slayer guys. One, I just think it's crazy, but two, I believed that stuff for so long. And I thought that my life was falling apart because I was involved in the occult, law of attraction, and mm-hmm. I was involved in Santeria. And mm-hmm. so I thought that demons now had access to my life, and I had to break generational curses. And the reason I'm broke is because I have the poverty demon and all of this stuff. So when I see them teaching this, and I see that it's so popular, I'm like, nah, I want to call it out. Right. So I don't care what these people, if they want to go be wolves, be wolves. You got to deal with God after that. But for the people who are caught up in following them, I just want to plant a seed in their mind of, oh, well, maybe this isn't right. Let me look into what this crazy guy who's, attacking people on Instagram, let me look into what he's saying. And so I hope to just be like a pebble in somebody's shoe, that when they follow these things to their logical conclusion and they reach the end of the road of, they're on their 20th deliverance session.
Oh my gosh,
and
come on.
They're not free from whatever it is that they're struggling with. And they come to the realization that this is wrong. I don't want them to come to the realization, to the false realization that God is wrong and that maybe this isn't real and this isn't God. And I want them to have an outlet of where they can search for the truth, and hopefully I can be that outlet for them to put things into perspective for them, and they can realize, wow, people were calling this out long ago. So I want people to have a right relationship with God and not this confusing one that I feel is so popular today.
So as y'all can see, y'all, J Clash definitely ruffled some feathers. And honestly, I'm happy about that. I am so happy about that, because sometimes you have to get to a place where you're past the milk, right? And you need solid food. And that's something that J Clash definitely did come and do that. And most people don't like his approach, like I said before, but it's totally okay, because he has a community of people that is for him and for his message. And for that, we have to definitely respect his boldness. So moving right along, we are now halfway into the season, and I was just at this point, as these episodes are coming out, I'm like, oh my gosh, it just keeps getting better and better and better. How can we top this? And at this point, it was a perfect opportunity to kind of come back and just center ourselves from all the excitement and really get back to making sure that our foundation is being built correctly. And this is why it was so important for me to do my solo episodes about covenant. It was actually appointed upon me to be able to study out covenants and have a good understanding of it. And I'll tell y'all, even today, I have a more understanding of covenants than I did when I even made that episode. And something I do have to say is, at the time of making that episode, and what I did discuss in that episode is more about the good covenants, the godly covenants, what God says about covenants. But what I have learned now is that there are also a lot of ungodly covenants that needs to be broken. And the thing about God, that God honors covenants whether they are good or bad. So we have a responsibility, if there's even negative or demonic covenants that are in the bloodline that need to be broken, we have a responsibility to tear those evil covenants down, those demonic covenants down, so that they don't go through to our children's for more generations to come. So that is probably a whole nother season in itself. But I do understand that God takes covenants very, very seriously. And that is something that I wanted all the listeners and viewers and watchers to understand, so that they don't get themselves in trouble with God when it comes to covenants. So let's take a look what I had to say about covenants.
So one of the main examples is Adam and Eve. Everyone knows that story, whether you are a Christian or not, right? And God had a covenant with them. God had a promise with them. God had an agreement with them. But then the serpent comes in and says, I know God said this, but he didn't really mean that. Or, you can go ahead and not hold up your end of the bargain and it won't really be that bad. And what he has done is he came in and perverted what God said he was going to do. And that little demon on the shoulder that's causing you to do things that God has told you not to do. And because you think the consequence won't be that bad, you go and do it anyway. Another example of this is the rainbow, right? The rainbow. And God says, this rainbow is to let you know that this is my covenant with my people. I would never do what I did when it came with the flood, right? But now look how the enemy has perverted that covenant. Look what the rainbow stands for now. Same thing with Abraham and Sarah. God gave them the promise of having many nations, and then the enemy comes in with doubt. See, it doesn't always have to be you too much being disobedient, but what about the heart posture? What about the spirit? So now doubt comes in, fear comes in, disbelief comes in, which causes you to go ahead and do things out of impatience, which causes you to come in and do things out of your own thinking and out of your understanding, because sometimes God promises us certain things and we just think that it's not going to come to pass because our mind is so limited, because we think, oh my gosh, how can God really do this for me? How can God choose me? And that was a situation that happened with Abraham and Sarah. So oftentimes, even now with marriage, as we see, a lot of people now, and I'm so shocked when I usually see it, but a lot of people now, they don't care for marriage. They don't care for children. They don't care for any of that. A lot of people even say that marriage is just a piece of paper. And I truly believe that people wouldn't feel that way, had they not been acting married before they were actually in covenant. But because people do these things and they display certain actions before getting into that true covenant, then they don't really understand that things do change and things are supposed to change. And that is why it is so honorable to God.
Amazing, guys. So amazing. Now, after this episode, I was visited by my good friend, longtime friend, Gerard, God's chosen Superman. And this conversation was it was kind of like nostalgic for me because, y'all, I've known Gerard since I was in 5th grade. And I ain't finna tell y'all my age, but we've known each other for a very, very long time. And the reason why this episode was just so important is because people need to see people our age, young, very young, talking about God, being sold out for God, being an example and wanting to be an example, but also holding a position in the kingdom to do the right thing and to go out there and really proclaim Jesus boldly. And not to say that there aren't people doing it, because there are a lot of people doing it. But one thing I will say is, although we do have a responsibility to save souls, I think what we also should focus on, probably just as much or even more, are the people who are already believers, people who already love God, people who already have a commitment to God, because they want more and they want to grow more. But there are some things that these people struggle with, and they want to be saved daily. They want to be refilled daily and refreshed daily by the love of Jesus, by the covering of Jesus. And sometimes I feel like we forget those people because we're too busy trying to bring new people in. And there is a level of cultivation that still needs to be done for people who are already in God. And I feel like that conversation really did that, while also being open and honest about our struggles, being this age and wanting to be sold out for God, but also going through life. And it was a really open and honest conversation that I hope that you guys enjoyed so well. So here it is. We are young. We like to have a good time. We like to be outside. We like to try. We like these things. Like we are not like I stay in the house now because I just believe that outside is not as fun as it used to be. That's it.
Absolutely.
If outside was fun, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we will be having a different conversation. It ain't just that fun no more. But we do enjoy fun. We like to dance. We were just out a couple months ago, and we had a great time
Absolutely.
outside.
Absolutely.
But what I would say is what. Can you explain that balance as believers? Because I do feel in this generation, the lines have gotten really blurred. Even when it comes to Christian music, like now it's like Christian R&B, Christian date night songs, like Christian trap. I feel like lines have gotten blurred. So what is that balance?
So I believe that God doesn't want us to not have fun. I just think that we need to do it in modesty, decency, and with order. So if I'm going out somewhere, I'll still make sure that I'm representing Christ. I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, here's a prime example. So I had this outfit on. So I went to a block party on my birthday in New York. I think it was in Brooklyn, actually. And so what I then did was I was gifted this shirt, which says, "Pray first, worry never," and it has it in the back. And people, strangely enough, ask me questions about God. And so I'm like, oh, so let me tell you a little bit about him. And so I still make sure that where I'm at, I'm still making sure that God gets all the glory. I'm still making sure that he gets all the praise. There was another time I was at Comic-Con, and I had a customized jean jacket that had Superman on it, Isaiah 54:17, things like that. And then so we're walking about our business. Usually they don't believe that Christians should go to Comic-Con or anything anime,
Wow.
you know, demons and things like that, what they
Okay.
believe. So therefore, but I'm still representing Christ. Some guy comes to me, hey, what does Isaiah 54:17 mean to you? I let him know what it means. Come to find out, that individual is a pastor.
Wow.
And so then we start chatting it up. Then we got a couple more people chatting it up. And so now we're just having a whole conversation about Christ.
Wow.
So no matter where you're at, I still feel like you should let people know, hey, I'm about Christ. And me and Christ means business. When it comes to music, I need to, me personally, I try to identify maybe the spirit of that song.
Okay.
And where it's coming from. Like, for example, a prime example, I'm not sure if you saw Lil Nas X recent video. Okay. So he then was trying to identify as a Christian. So he then makes a Christian song that had different things that talked about Jesus, things like that, but it was more of a mocking term.
Wow.
And so now I know you can be talking about Jesus, but based on your spirit and what you're saying, how you're saying it, how you're visually showing it, I can then identify, okay, this isn't Christ-like.
Right. Yeah, discernment.
So, and it's the same thing for regular gospel music. I feel like I can identify whether somebody's making it for like just music or worship. Like that's why I genuinely prefer worship Christian songs. I don't really mess with the R&B too much. It's very rare I deal with the rap Christian music songs. Not saying that it's bad, but I don't believe that just because you throw God's name in it, just because you throw Jesus' name in it, doesn't really identify as a Christian song. Prime example, DJ Khaled's song, God Did. He says God did, but then you have Jay-Z that calls himself Hove or Jehovah, which is short obviously for Jehovah. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily call that God-like music, even though it has God in it. So it's just certain things that you can really discern and really identify, like, okay, this isn't really what's God-like. So let me not force myself on that too much.
Once again, such an amazing, powerful episode, y'all. So as we are winding down in the season, and just to let you guys know, if you guys haven't caught up on all the seasons, make sure you guys go and do that, because I can assure you, even if there's only one thing per episode, there is something that's going to bless your socks off. So make sure that you guys go back and take a look and just see what God has to say to you. So the next episode we have is The Virtuous Man, Mr. Michael James. And this was a conversation that I knew needed to happen. And I said this in the episode, like from our first conversation ever, I was like, yo, people need to hear this. People need to hear this conversation, because it is just so taboo for men to be abstinent or for men to be celibate. It just really is. And like he says in the episode, like amongst really the men community, you don't hear have less sex, you hear have more sex. And really sometimes you need to, especially if you're unmarried, you need to not have sex, period. But also too, there's a level of responsibility that you have to take care of yourself, to take care of your mind, handle your responsibilities, but also know your value as a man. And then when you know your value as a man, you wouldn't be so quick to be giving your body up so often. And I really hope men took that into consideration, and really there was a light bulb for them to say, hey, like, he's right. I need to be able to value myself more. I need to be able to take care of myself more. And I think that Michael is another person super bold for what he believes in. And let me tell you, if you're a man and you're looking for a community to be around other men on the same journey, make sure you guys reach out to him. He has an amazing group of other men who are really just focusing on their abstinence, their celibacy journey, and really working to be greater men, and not necessarily for anyone else, but for themselves. But let's take a look into that episode. And before you even go further, as a man, what does it feel like to feel that the woman you're with is only with you for the sex? Because you don't hear that often from men. From women, more so, you'd be like, yeah, he just only wanted to get in my drawers. But from a man's perspective, how does that feel?
So at first it was really confusing, because she wasn't really communicating. I think for a woman in that position, she wasn't being fully honest. So I couldn't really put my hands on what was really going on, because she wasn't really being fully honest and transparent about where she was. Right,
with her mindset, what she wanted out of everything.
Right, because you got to understand, if you come out and be honest, like, look, I only really want the sex. I don't really want I don't see a future with us, but I like what we have going on, like that situationship kind of thing. If you be honest with people and the other person is like a serious person, they serious about themselves, they gonna leave.
Right.
If you be honest.
And I would say men have a harder time with abstinence than women. Would you agree with that?
100%.
Why do you think that is?
Well, like we were just talking about a few minutes ago, me being a barber, I'm very transparent about my journey. I'm talking to them about the fact that I haven't watched porn in almost 2 years.
Wow.
No masturbation in almost 2 years, no sex in almost 2 years. So I'm very prideful and very transparent with a lot of my guy clients because I know that that's a narrative that's never been pushed.
Yeah.
Never been pushed amongst men. That's a conversation that's never really been had amongst men. Maybe if your father were the pastor, just real talk.
And even then, sometimes it's just they be the worst. But
right.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, if you have that influence, maybe an uncle in the family or a dad or somebody, But other than that, that's a conversation that's never really been had amongst men. So I wouldn't say I just. I think that amongst women, it's more women that'll have that conversation amongst their girlfriends. Like, oh, he don't got his stuff together. Oh, he ain't getting none.
Right.
There's so many narratives floating around in the realm of guys, that's why slow down when it comes to sex? Why have less sex? Why stop having sex? So culturally, it's so with manhood, it's so much amongst men that's have more sex. That's what you're supposed to do. Go passport to manhood, have more sex and go and run through whoever you got to run through until you find that
right.
one. That's
it's kind of giving that's what's making you a man.
Right. It's so much in having multiple partners for some guys. That's their it's
their badge of honor.
Yeah, their badge of honor.
Yeah,
they stick their chests out. You know what I mean? And even for some guys that come from having multiple partners and they're married now, they don't know that they're carrying a lot of that baggage into their marriage.
Now, once again, guys, if you're looking for a community for men, that way you can learn your value and be a part of other men who are on the same journey as you, make sure that you guys go and get connected. Now, y'all, my two favorite people came and blessed the podcast. And like I said, PJ has the VIP Virtue Award because this was his third episode, but this time he was accompanied by his beautiful wife, Samantha, my sister. And honestly, even though I say you can't really say you have a favorite episode, I think for me, this was my favorite episode. And the reason why is because it kind of gave that feeling all right, this is the happy ending, right? This is the light at the end of the tunnel. And you'll go through all these things. I mean, from, finding God to building your relationship to God to probably, not doing it right and getting pregnant and getting an abortion or, being, of a different faith and then becoming a Christian or, even being married but having to get a divorce and going through these different leaderships and ministries, just trying to find your way and then realizing that some people are leading you astray and then you really find where you're supposed to be going and then truly understanding what you mean to God and what his covenant was with you and then understanding your value as a woman or a man and then really just saying no matter where you are in your journey, God can still call you. God can still call you to be his superhero. And then you're wow, here I am. all of this was for a reason. It was all worth it at the end. And that just gave me, it blessed me so much. It gave me a feeling of, okay, I really do have something to look forward to. And I hope that people who actually have taken the journey all the way from episode 1 to episode 10 felt that, like, wow, like, I can really have this. Like, God's promises are really true. They are really yes and amen, and stand in agreement with that. So this episode blessed me so much. We talked about communication. We talked about, the dating, what's happening in marriages, the attacks on marriages, but how to have a successful marriage. All those things is what we discussed in that episode. So let's take a look at what the Luckies had to say. Samantha, what was your journey of waiting until marriage?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I can't say from before I met PJ, that was my goal. I think I didn't really put too much thought into it. I grew up in church. I think it was like, that would be nice but kind of. And I think God works in amazing ways that it didn't happen. And then when I met PJ, I will name, and I've always said this, that was his standard. And it became my standard. And I was like, I'm good with this. And so for me, I think back though to when I was younger, always thinking, I'm growing up in church, but I feel like there's more. And then I found TCC and I was like, I feel complete in that. And I think the way it worked out was for a reason. I think God knew like I needed to wait, and I'm glad that the other things that I tried to escalate or do because other people were doing didn't happen. And so I think that journey to him and then us going through the waiting was definitely a learning journey. It required accountability from each other, but also others around us. It required intentionality, like not putting ourselves in certain situations because you're physically attracted to each other. Let's be real. I mean, for us, that's important. We wanted to I wanted to marry someone, same for PJ, that I was physically attracted to.
Yeah.
And so making sure you're not setting yourself up, right? Perfect. We're not like, we are holy. Like, it doesn't work like that. The feelings don't go away because you're like, I want to wait.
Yeah, for sure.
And that. And then I also think for PJ, and I do think this for men, when you set that standard, and he said it, and I was like, I'm with it, that it did move things along faster in some ways of like, not that we rushed into marriage because of that, but I think for us, because there were certain things that like we didn't live together. We didn't have sex. I think it made it more special. And I also think it caused us to focus on other things.
Now, I had people that say, no, listen, keep yourself. Don't keep yourself for me. Keep yourself for God.
Yes,
keep yourself because it's going to be better in the long run for several different reasons. And I understand it so much better now because I didn't have certain experiences. I didn't have to go through, and I would say like detox from other women.
Come on. That's
because
good.
when you've had certain sexual experiences, you got to detox in order to properly accept and please your woman.
Wow.
Or you're going to be looking for that same thing in her from either that initial experience or that last experience that you had. So for me, again, I mean, really, I had an uncle, I can't name the amount of times he would stop, hey, how you doing, man? What's going on? Listen, trust me. If you just hold off, he kept saying, you're a commodity. You're the commodity. You hold off, you're intelligent, you're good looking. You're the commodity. God's going to give you what you want.
Wow. So guys, that is season 2 wrap up. And honestly, we had an amazing time. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that we were able to do all of this. Like I said before, season 1 was just audio, and then we upgraded. We gave y'all the visuals. We gave y'all the intimacy, the rawness, the vulnerability. We gave it all to y'all. But even though I want to thank all the people that joined us for season 2. Once again, I want to thank you guys as well for coming in and just digesting and trusting our voices, trusting that we are vessels from God. And I am so grateful for all of you guys. And because of y'all, we had over 500 downloads, guys, for the podcast. And that's not even including all of the YouTube views. And none of that would have happened without y'all. So I am super grateful. There is so much in store for this new year for Virtue. And honestly, as God continues to speak, we're going to continue to follow. And we just pray that you guys come along with us for the ride. So stay tuned, y'all, because we have an amazing event that is coming up March 8th. So save the date, because I promise y'all, you do not want to miss what God is going to do for everyone who chooses to be a part. So as always, we're going to end this thing in prayer. God, we just thank you for another amazing season of the Virtue podcast. We thank you for everyone that has come on this platform and who has been a voice to bless your people. We thank you for all of the people who have listened in, who have watched, and who have supported. God, may the desires of their heart come to pass. May you bless them tenfold for even investing their time and energy to supporting your movement. God, we just pray that anything that we've said, Lord, to them that has touched them, that you help them to continue to be on the right journey and to do the right thing. And we decree that no weapon formed against them shall be able to prosper. When they're feeling weak, God, you will speak to them to go to a certain episode that will bless them, encourage them, and give them peace. God, we thank you for protecting them, protect everyone that has been involved with this podcast one way or another, even the people that gave a like, a comment, a share. God, we just ask that you expand and you increase their territory, completely expand all that they're doing and all that you have for them and their life and the vision and the purpose that you have for them to go on. God, we trust you for all the things that you're doing. We bless you, we love you, and we thank you, and we can't wait for what's in store. Guys, well, that's it. That's season 2. And with much gratitude, Virtue.
No time to slow. Anticipated this moment for much too long now. Nothing stopping what is mine, what is destined. No second guessing. It's time to shine now. Create a different, no